For today's webinar, we are going to be going over the new ARMS release, ARMS 2020, and this is a two-part webinar. So this is the first part where we're going to be going over some new features, some additions, and some just upgrades, basically. So one of the first things I want to talk about, because we're not going to be able to really show you this, but there has been a lot of improvements and enhancements to the actual upgrade process, to the actual ARMS installer. And we have some, we actually did a webinar on that a month ago, I believe. And so you can check that out. We've also got some documentation for that as well, just to make it easier for both us to do an install, or if your department chooses to do a self upgrade or something like that, or just even upgrading your own test system. We put some enhancements into the installer to make that an easier process, basically making it so that there's less to fill out. It just pulls from what's already in the database or what's already in the registry for that server. And more of that information is going to be provided in the release notes for this release, and those release notes will be posted after this webinar. They'll be up at least by tomorrow, but I'm going to try and make sure that they're posted right after we finish this webinar. All right, so we'll go ahead and dive in. The first thing, and mainly what I want to say about this release, is it's got a lot of changes that were requested by users. So a lot of these features that we added in were enhancement requests, or things that were mentioned at the last conference that we wrote down and paid attention to and made sure to try and add into this release.
We call a lot of these the types of things that we're going to be going over today, sort of the quality of life enhancements as far as the software is concerned. You'll notice whenever we have a new feature come out, you're generally looking at, a major new module that may come out, something brand new, completely different than anything else we've had in ARMS before. And then sometimes you'll notice we have tweaks that we make to things, or small additions we make to existing modules. Those always fall into more of that quality of life, to where we're trying to listen to you and what suggestions you're giving us, and then applying those to the software from there to make everybody's life a little bit easier.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like you said, there's some big modules and some small changes like that, and a lot of times those small changes could be a big modules to some departments, and so that's what we're kind of looking for with this release. All right, so the first thing we're going to be looking at, we're going to be going into the setup menu. For this webinar, a lot of the changes are in the setup menu for your department. So the first part we'll look at is going to be in system defaults. So just going through here, I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and we'll come right here, and you'll see media settings right here. This is where you can define where your media folder is. We do that during the install, but the big one is this maximum file size. So this is where you can actually limit the size of a file that an officer or a supervisor or anyone adds to the mobile software. So to this website, you can limit the file size for that, or you can expand it. So this defaults to 500, so it's always going to be 500 megabytes. I don't have a video that's over 500 megabytes, so I just shortened mine down to 250 so that I can show you what it looks like if someone tries to add in something that's over that. So if we come up here to a case that I've already got open, I've gone down to the other media, and I'm going to add a new file in here. Let me pull up my file. I've got my test video right here. So I can drag and drop it in there, and it'll say the file you're trying to upload exceeds the 250 megabyte limit. Now, just for some perspective here, the video that I just tried to upload is 3 hours. So the default is 500 megabytes. And yes, you can exceed that 500 megabytes. It's whatever you want to set that as. But 250 megabytes at one time is what I'm saying. This isn't saying you can only add in 250 megabytes total. It's with one file. So that file was 300 hours, or sorry, was 3 hours of video, and it was like 285 megabytes. So 500 megabytes, which is the default that it's set to, is usually going to be like around 6 hours of information.
What we've seen in some situations in the past is we have customers that have users that are uploading extremely large files in the situations that they don't need to. Maybe they had a 5-minute, let's say, security cam footage that they wanted to upload, and they ended up just taking a full day's worth of video and putting it into the system. From the IT point of view, for our customers that aren't hosted by us, your IT departments have trouble sometimes keeping up with the amount, the sheer amount of data that the users are putting in. So you can obviously tell your users, hey, make sure you're just uploading, you know, an edited down version of the incident, whatever the case may be there. But this is a limit that you can hard press on there that will actually keep that always the same place. To give you a little bit more idea of it too, for the person that asked why we would do that, if you use mobile, if you have mobile right now, you actually already have a limit. The previous versions of ARMS in mobile had a hard cap limit of, I believe, 2 gigs that you couldn't modify. So you've actually been working with a limit up to this point. What we've done here is we've given you the ability to set that limit yourself. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of a step up from where you were.
Yeah, basically just making it to where your media file doesn't get overloaded with, you know, seemingly useless content whenever it could be more defined. All right, and we'll go back to the system defaults. So we've got the file size limit that you can set up here, and then we'll scroll down a little bit. We'll go deeper into this section a little bit more, but we've moved the dictionary synchronization settings and the dictionary sync into mobile as well. And I'll show you that in a little bit, but I wanted to show you here where you can set up that dictionary sync. If you do have any questions for what the server address for you should be, which everybody's going to be using the same server address, but you will have different usernames and passwords for your department, and you'll have to get that from us. But once you get that information from us, then you can test your connection and make sure that it goes through, and you can see you'll get a little checkbox that says it goes through. Then you can use the dictionary sync whenever you want through mobile, and I'll show you that in a little bit as well. All right, and then scrolling down, one big request that we had from a lot of departments was a terms of use setting for the login screen. So you can see right here, you've got where you can enable your terms of use on the login screen. So just checking that box. And you can even require your users to agree to the terms of use and put in whatever kind of information you want to put in there. This is just the default that we put in there, but you can change that for your own personal department. That just shows up whenever anyone logs into ARMS. They've got to come in and they'll see this message, and you can even make them check a user agreement or agree to the terms of use before they log into ARMS. Just sort of a security feature for that. All right, and then we'll scroll up, and I'm going to come down to the tab for miscellaneous. And this is one that a lot of people, or we've gotten a lot of questions about recently, was the profile data information in ARMS. So in the setup menu, you can come to miscellaneous tab and set up what different sections of ARMS have access to profile data. We default it to just be citations, like moving citations, or interviews, like field interviews for that. So if there is a moving citation or a field interview, that way you can fill out profile data for reporting that information. A lot of departments have to do that for their state, and a lot of departments are going to have to do that for their state. There's been a lot of changes for reporting that profile data.
We've got a little bit too into why we default in the citations and interviews there. Citations and interviews are things that you can attach to any CAD event and to any case management through the master name section. So we run into some departments that want to have access to it from the root of CAD or from the main case base page, and that's fine. We give you that option. But what we see users run into at that point, if you make it available on all four, then you have some people that are attaching it to citations, some people that are attaching it to CAD, some people that are attaching it to case management, and it becomes tougher on you, the administrator, to correctly kind of curate your profile data that's going into ARMS. So we normally suggest just using the citations and interviews to do that, but you do have that option to add those in to those other windows as well.
Yep, and that's exactly right. It also can create duplicates as well if someone's adding them just to CAD events and then someone else is adding them just to citations. Someone could see a CAD event and say, well, there was no profile data on this, and so they add in the same information, but they already had it for that citation on that CAD event. So whatever way your department wants to do it, we give you the option to check the boxes for that. But you can do this through the setup menu. And we've also got more documentation on this if you do want to know more about the profile data, reporting profile data, or even we have examples of codes that would go into the profile data if you turn this on and see that you're missing some codes in there. All right, so we'll go ahead and go back to the setup menu down here. And our next section is going to be in the user access. So if we go into user access right here, and we'll choose Johnny, you'll notice there's a button down here called external accounts. That is going to be for SSO or single sign-on or SAML integration. So what that is just a way for your department to set up like two-factor authentication to where kind of like if you used Active Directory where you can use your Windows login to log into ARMS, you can use SSO to log into ARMS using whatever else your department uses. And to do that, let me go back to setup. You would come down to external applications down here. And a lot of this kind of gets into the technical side of ARMS, but you would come in and set up a new external application. You would set up the protocol and then all the information right here. I don't have this set up because I don't have an external for my test, but you would be able to set this up with your IT, and you would want to contact us because we can help with that process. But you would set that up, and then whenever you come back over to user access right here, and you go into that external account, that is where you can add a new external account for this person. So you would choose the application, which is the one I've already got in there. And then you would put in the token, which would be whatever their username is for that other application, the application you're using to sign in to ARMS or sign into anything really. So this could be their email address or just a username or anything like that. That'll make it so that whenever they open up ARMS, they won't get the normal login screen. They'll get a login screen that pushes it to that other application. Then they log into that application and they can use two-factor authentication there, and then it sends back to ARMS and logs them in as whatever employee they're linked to. And there's a message in the chat for, does the server have to be on-prem or off-prem for this? Either way, it works. At least that's the way I understand it. Jason, yeah. You may know.
Yeah, it works in either situation. So if you're a customer that hosts their own server on site, or if they host it off site, or if we host your server, it doesn't really matter. Those connection points that we had there, as long as we can make that connection between point A and point B, then you can use that authentication service. So we have some that are using and once again, this may go way too deep into the technical side of it. We have some customers that are using like Microsoft Azure SSO authentication throughout their server. So it can reach out to that and then come back to your local server if you want to from your campus. If you want to, we can set you up one for our for our hosted customers as well. Most of our hosted customers, I think, are just still using just the ARMS username and password. But if you do want to look into that, please just let us know. We'll be happy to have a chat with you and kind of talk you through what would be needed to get all that set up.
Yeah, exactly. One thing to just reiterate to you guys is this: setting up this SSO is available to all of our customers. So if you do want to get it set up, if you already have an SSO provider, or you're not sure about if you do or not, you can contact your IT, and all you have to do is just email us and let us know, and we can get you set up with that.
Yeah, Shibboleth is fine. We've worked with Shibboleth plenty of times. I can't even remember all the different names. There's so many out there. I think there's one called Octo. Yeah, there's a bunch. But yeah, we can work with Shibboleth to answer your specific question. But I'm hesitant to even say that there's some out there that we couldn't work with. So
yeah,
just
exactly.
let us know.
Yeah, and if you do have questions on that, you can always email us later on if you do have a question about that. I'm the same as Jason. I don't know all the different companies that we can work with to get set up, but I'm just here to show it off and let you guys know that it is accessible for you if you want to set it up.
Devin's just Vanna White in this instance.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So one other thing that I want to show you in user access, and I didn't mention this before, but a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is new features and also just some changes in ARMS that we want to make everyone aware of. One of those changes is going to be if you've memorized this user access screen, you'll notice one thing is missing over here on the side, and that's going to be the mobile report writer permission, which is just ARMS mobile. So we've kind of removed that, but we've, in a much more real sense, we've sort of merged it with other access in the system. So for mobile report writer, we split up the permissions in that and just gave it to CAD and case management, because for case management, most of them were the exact same. So for CAD, you can see we added in a self call, which was a mobile report writer one, and can issue report from mobile CAD. Those are going to be in CAD now instead of the mobile report writer. And if they already had access to do that in mobile report writer, then it just translates to CAD. It doesn't change it. You won't have to worry about this. But I did want to let everyone know that it moved there. Same thing with case management. If you want them to have access to add a case, it'll be the same add case button right here. So if they had permission to add a case in mobile report writer, then they'll have permission to add a case in case management, and vice versa. If they didn't have that permission, then it won't change. All right. And then one other thing that I want to talk about in the user access portion of it is going to be access for exporting CSV files. So there's a lot of places in ARMS now where you can export a CSV. And if you don't know what that is, it's just an Excel spreadsheet. So for example, the arrest tab, now you can see there's a button for can export to a CSV file. And you can see Johnny Carlisle doesn't have access to that. There's a couple more. I can actually tell you the list right now. It's going to be for BOLOs, businesses, case log, a case log search, a moving citation search, names, profile data, and property search. So all of those search results will be able to export to a CSV file. And then, you know what, I'll actually go ahead and just show you what it looks like.
Yeah, I was going to say, go ahead and do an export real fast.
So if we go to arrest over here, this will show me all of the arrests that I have. I can filter that by changing the date from and to if I only want to see certain ones. I can change the arrest type. I can find the booking number itself. I can search for a specific person or any of this information up at the top right here. And then you would hit search, and whatever your search results are down here, you can hit to CSV file, and it'll download a CSV file for you. So for an arrest, I've already got one set up right here. It would pull out just like this. So it would have the information on that arrest in just a spreadsheet format for you. And again, you can do the same thing whenever you search for, well, let me just minimize that. You can do the same thing for exporting any of the search results in those fields that I I talked about, the BOLO, business, case log, moving citations, names, profile data, or property. Same thing, you would search up at the top, and then you can just hit to CSV to just get a CSV file of that. All right, and speaking of CSV files, there's another one that you can do. If we go back into setup, and then come over to geo file right here. You can come in here, and then you've got an export button up at the top to where you can export the full geo file, or you can export just the hazardous material warnings, the contact information from the phone directory, or the security matrix information for each of the geo files. So you can do that same thing as with the arrest, and this would just pull all of them in your system. All right.
And just to point it out, this isn't a new feature, but the same exact ability exists for crime codes as well.
Yep.
So if you're in a situation where you want to export your crime list, this is one I get a lot on the support end. If you have a situation where you want to export your entire crime list to audit it, take a look at it, make some quick edits in an Excel spreadsheet to kind of show how you want all your crime codes to be changed, anything like that, you can export that list from the crime code section as well.
Yep. All right, and so we'll go into one of these geo files, and we'll actually look at some of the features for the geo file. So one thing in here, we'll come down to the other media tab. So before, we just had photos, or actually it was called blueprints. So before in the geo file, it was just called blueprints, where you would add photos to that blueprint section. And we had some requests to add an other media tab in here as well. So we've got photos just the same, and it pulls from whatever you have in the blueprint section. And then the other media is going to be for anything else that you would want to add to that geo file. For the most part, what I've heard from people is that they have blueprints that are printed on PDFs for different places at their department. And instead of having to screenshot those and save them as a picture, you can just upload that PDF to where you can view that through the other media tab. You can also add, just like with a case, you can add any kind of other media there, an audio file, a video, or anything like that that would help with that location.
So if you have any data, let's say security matrix data, hazmat data, anything like that, that you already have in a PDF form, and you don't want to update ARMS with that data or keep it up to date with it, you can switch out these PDFs obviously a lot faster than you can go through each of your locations and edit security matrix. Now, obviously, the best approach is always going to be to keep the data in its right module. So for example, if I put hazmat material information in a PDF, that's not going to alert me on my CAD screen as if I put it in the hazmat materials, the section in my location. One kind of easy way around that is if you want to just put in sort of a default hazmat alert. If you know that location has hazardous materials and is always going to have hazardous materials. And then in the notes for your hazmat alert, and it's just one example, in the notes for your hazmat alert, you could put C media. And then that way the user that gets that alert will know, hey, let me open up other media and see what's in the most up-to-date PDF that my administrator has uploaded here. So it's just kind of one way to look at it there. But yeah, any of the data that you want to store about the location, put it in a PDF, store it in there, then that way it's available wherever you access that location from.
Yep. All right. And then below that, we've also got the Alias module. This is not something new, but it was added to the mobile side for the geo file. So here is where you can add an alias. And if you don't already know what this module is, it's just a way to keep track of other names for that location that can also be searched in CAD. So say that for this example, not a great example from me, but Parkwood Hall, and then the alias is P Hall. That's what students on campus call it, or something like that. A dispatcher would then be able to either search by the common name or the location code, or even type in the alias right here, and that same location would come up. So just an easier way for you to keep track of locations if people call it by a different name. All right, and so we'll go back to the setup menu. And we're going to talk about another feature that's in here that I am very happy about. This was one thing that I also wanted very badly in here, and that's going to be filtering the crime codes list. So if you're in the crime code section, we can come up to filter, and this gives you a lot of other search criteria that you can search your crime codes by. Before, it was just offense code and classification, I think, I think it was offense code and crime module. So we added in the ability to still search by offense code, still search by the crime module, so if it's in CAD only or case management. But you can also search by the UCR data code, UCR offense, which is going to be for NIBRs, the actual description of it, the classification, the Clery Act data, the level of offense, and the crime types. So this is just where a way to see, I want to see everything that's marked to show up in my include to right to know report, or I want to see that everything that's marked as a crime against person, and just a way to search through that. So you can say for NIBRs, if you're trying to check and see what all codes are set up with the 13A, that's going to be an aggravated assault. You can search for that, and that'll pull up all of the aggravated assaults that you have. Or if you want to search by description and just say, I want to see all of the assaults that are in the system, you can search by that as well. So again, this is, to me, very much a quality of life update to help with searching through your crime codes to find specific ones. And going off of that, what Jason mentioned before, the export for this, same thing as GeoFile. If you run that export, that'll get you a full CSV file of all of your crime codes and the different crime types that it has, different crime code modules that it's set up with, and all of that. All right, so we'll go to Setup menu again. And one of the last things that I want to show you for the Setup menu is this code list. So in code list, kind of the same thing with that filtering in crime codes, you can also filter in here. So let me show you one that I know has data that'll show well. So if we go to category, property and evidence, and go to property description, you can come here and choose the status that you want to look at. So you've got active. So right now we're looking at all of the active codes in the system for the property description. If you want to see all, you can choose that. If you want to see any inactive one, you can see that as well. I've only got one inactive code. You can also see which ones are system codes, so those bold ones. So we've got one in there as well. And you can show the ones that have synced. So what we are about to talk about is the dictionary sync. And if you've used that before, you know that it adds in codes to your code list. And so if you want to see all of the codes that have been added by the dictionary sync, you can choose that status to see all of those. All right, let's go back to our setup menu. And now this, the last thing I want to show you in the setup menu is just additions that we've added to it. So a couple of those is going to be the purge data feature. So in here, this is where you can choose to purge data that's in the system. So if you want to purge, old data, so old CAD events or old case logs, you can come in and choose to do that through mobile. Of course, people would have to have permission to be able to do all of that, and it would track any employee who did any kind of data purge in there. But that is a new addition to the mobile setup menu. We've also got the dictionary synchronization, like we've talked about a couple times before. This is where once you've got your information set up correctly in there, you can come in here and sync your codes that are in the system. Most of these codes in here are going to either be related to the NCIC vehicle color, make, and model, or below that is all NIBRs information, so that people who do have to report NIBRs don't have to go in and fill out all of the codes that are required by NIBRs themselves. All right, let's go back to the setup. We've also got identified groups in here. So if you do have any identified groups on campus, like a gang, or in your department, a gang, or could be any kind of group really that you can think of that you want to keep track of as an identified group, you can put that information in here related to their name, the type, whatever type you have, any kind of information about the location for them, and the description. You can even add in images as well. All right. And then we talked about the external applications with SSO. And the very last one is the application settings. So these are some settings that you, before we had to do on the back end for a department, but now you can go in and make these changes yourself. There's only two that really apply to most departments, which is going to be Arms Mobile, and that's the Officer in Distress button. If you remember, we did have a button that used to be at the top of every Arms Mobile screen that would alert everyone through the Arms Instant Messenger if someone hit that button. You can choose to hide or show that button. You can update your report center to change what you have options to be able to use in there. And the mapping portal, which is probably the biggest one to me, is where you can set up your mapping portal on the home screen with your own agency ID. Before, it just went to portal.arms.com, but now you can set it up with your specific map so that whenever you click on the mapping portal on the home screen, it'll go straight to your map only.
And if you don't know your agency ID for the ARMS mapping portal, just let us know. We can give that to you.
Yep, that's right. All right. All right, and then the last thing that we are going to be looking at today is some additions to the home screen for mobile as well. So in here, you can go over to Additional, and you'll see the two new modules that we've added to mobile. You've got Vehicle Maintenance and a tow file. So if we click on that, we'll go over to the tow file. And here is where you can add in any information for towing a vehicle that you need to in the system. You can do that from the home screen itself or from the sidebar, or you can always do that through a case, a CAT event, or a moving citation itself. But this is another way to be able to search for that information. So if we click on this one, you'll be able to see all of the information that was put in for this tow file, and then you can add in whatever information that you have. So just a way for now an officer to be able to put in that information for tow file through Arms Mobile. All right, and then the other one we've got, if we go over to Additional, is going to be Vehicle Maintenance. This is where you can track all of the vehicle maintenance information through mobile now. So if you go to Department Vehicles, you can see a list of all of your department vehicles and add new ones in. So if we click on this one, you can see the information for the date purchase, date and service, the mileage, and you can also add on equipment to that department vehicle. So if you have equipment that is attached to that vehicle at all times, you can put that information and keep track of that the same way that you keep track of the equipment that you attach to an officer. All right. And then you've got some codes in here, maintenance codes and vendors. So if there is maintenance that has to be done on the vehicle, you can come in and add those codes into here. Or any vendors that would be doing the maintenance for that, you can add in here as well. And then finally, a vehicle repair order, where if any maintenance has to be done, you'd be able to combine those maintenance codes with the vendor name. So you would put in the vehicle that is getting repaired, and then the repair that is being done on that vehicle and how much it cost and when it happened. Just a way for everyone to be able to keep track of all that information within ARMS. And then once you are taking that information, you can go down to Department Vehicle Reports and pull up reports for that information. So if you want to do a monthly usage report or monthly usage by officer or any of these that you see in the system. So if we did vehicle service history, and let's pull back some data here, and then you can print that out and it would show the information through a report for what you pulled up to see. So same thing with all of these other ones. You can do that same thing, put in the date from and date to, and then choose the print button to see the information through a report. All right, and then finally, the modify vehicle records. So this is for if you need to change the mileage for a vehicle or something like that. Now, the vehicle or the mileage is tracked whenever an officer or dispatcher logs it on and logs it off. It asks for the starting and ending mileage, but if someone puts that information in wrong or you realize that it is incorrect, you can always come in here and change that starting mileage or modify whatever kind of information they put in. You can also do a fuel inspection report where you can check to see what information was put in there. So anything that was changed with stopping for gas, or any fuel that was added, how much it cost, and who the officer was on that vehicle. So now you can do all of that through ARMS Mobile. Okay, so let's go back to the home screen. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up the Q&A PowerPoint. That's going to be all that we cover today for the new release. Keep in mind, we are going to have a second webinar in 2 weeks going over the part 2 information with more information about additions that are in this new release of ARMS. Okay, so let me bring this up. And we are in the Q&A session now. For the Q&A session, to ask a question, what you'll need to do is go to your main screen right here, and you should see that participants button down at the bottom. You can move your mouse around on the screen if you don't see it. Click on that participant button, and then it'll pop up a sidebar over here. And you'll see at the bottom of that sidebar, you've got a raise hand button. Once you click to raise your hand, we'll unmute you, and you can ask your question. And then once we've answered your question, we'll go ahead and mute you back, and then we'll go to the next person that has a question.
All right, looks like we got one in chat already. Jonathan Sofa, I think that's your name, asking about when the recording will be available. If anybody else has that question, I figured I'd go ahead and just answer that to everybody. Devin, what do you think you'll have this recording turned around for?
All of the recordings for this week will be posted this Friday.
Okay, so that'll be available Friday for you, John.
Yep.
And we do have a hand. We have a couple hands.
All right. Here, let me go ahead and unmute you, Mel. All right, Mel, can you hear us?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, I was just typing in the chat because I wasn't sure if my headphones were going to work. Are there going to be any changes to the dashboard in CAD, like to kind of mirror what like the desktop application looks like?
For the desktop client for CAD?
Yeah, because I know how like when you're in the desktop client, you kind of have like the logged on officers, and then you have like where you can enter all the information. I just know because eventually, I'm not sure if you guys are still going to move to like mobile and kind of just like get rid of the desktop application eventually. Me personally, I like the mobile version. But I also like how CAD is set up in the desktop application, where instead of clicking on multiple options, it's kind of all there.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. There hasn't been any any drastic changes to move CAD into mobile quite yet.
Okay.
There are some changes though for the UI there that might be things that would interest you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we do have some things that are coming up for the next webinar where we'll be hitting more on CAD itself. So if that's what you're interested in, I would definitely suggest going to that one too. But but no, nothing on the mobile side to make it look more like the thick client or anything like that.
Okay. Just figured I'd ask. I appreciate it.
All right, no problem.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and mute you back, Mel, and then we've got a question from Robert Patterson. All right, Robert, can you hear us?
I can hear you. How are you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. So my question also is about the CAD, and maybe it's a question for the next webinar if you're going to be talking about CAD then also, but I'll ask it here too. Are officers who don't have modify permissions for the desktop CAD, but they can interact through the mobile CAD, have found out that because they don't have modify permissions, they can't add a person to a CAD event on the mobile. They can add it to the, that when they click the add button for a person, it adds it to the master name file, but not to the CAD. And they get an error message when they try and add that to the CAD. Has that been?
Yeah,
correct?
that's actually been resolved. That was like a little loophole that we found in the way that you could set up a user access. So that has been resolved in this latest version.
Oh, good. I know we had sent that to you previously, but
yeah. Well, and then it was also confusing. You know, to be honest, it was a bit confusing setting it up. Part of that is the reason why what Devin was talking about earlier, moving the MRW permissions out of user access and just straight assigning those to their actual modules. It was confusing a lot of our users based off of, you know, if I give somebody add in case, does that mean they have add in mobile case? Does that mean they have add to issue a case from mobile CAD or from the actual CAD? So there was a lot of kind of if then that you had to know really to be able to set up somebody. So a lot of that's already been resolved. So yeah, that's not something you'll have to deal with in this version.
that's great news. Thanks.
No problem.
Our officers will be happy.
All right, thank you, Robert.
Yes, sir.
All right, and now we've got a question from Ryan Janis. Ryan, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. All right, Ryan, you there?
I am, yep. I just have a quick one. We don't currently use the profile data application. So my question is, does that auto-populate as much information as possible, or do you have to fill in each one of those fields each time?
It'll fill out all of the fields that the officer has filled out, obviously. So like if you're putting in like let's say a vehicle stop is usually the main example you use. You put in a vehicle stop, you can use what's already on the CAD event as far as the name information, as far as the vehicle information to fill out that profile data. Obviously, some of those fields aren't included in CAD. Reason for stop was race identifiable prior to stop. Fields like that aren't, you know, something that a dispatcher would have or has access to on the CAD screen. So those things would obviously still need to be filled out. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as much information as is importable into the racial profiling screen.
All right. Okay, so any other questions? And while we're, if anyone's typing or anything like that or thinking of a question, I'll go ahead and let you guys know. Just like someone already asked, we are going to be posting this video and all the webinars this Friday. That's kind of a regular thing that we're going to be doing is every Friday at the end of a week of webinars, we're going to be posting all the videos at once and sending out an email to everyone, letting them know that they're posted. So you can look for that email. And also, if you do have questions about something like profile data, like Ryan just had, we've got documentation on the support site, or you can email just support@arms.com, and we can send you that documentation. And again, you can always reach out to support@arms.com or call 1-800-776-6783 if you have any questions on anything. And then the same thing with the release notes that are going to be posted, you can always email and request those release notes, and we can send those over to you in case you don't have access to that support site. All right, but looks like we don't have any other questions. Jason, do you have anything else you want to add?
Hope everybody has a great day.
All right, well, that covers it. All right, thank you guys. I hope everybody stays safe and, like Jason said, has a great day. All right, bye.
Bye, everybody.